How would a child of immigrants from Ghana make it from the civil engineering degree to founding one of the most iconic streetwear brands, Off-White, to then going all the way to the top of the global fashion industry? Virgil Abloh is a true fashion icon. And yes, I know that there are a lot of stigma associated with this title, but believe me, by the end of this video, Virgil will surprise you. Welcome to the TohirT channel. My name is Tahir, and today we're talking about Virgil Abloh, his rise to the top, and how we can catch up to him in our own pursuits of passions, independently of the industry's arts, crafts, entrepreneurial adventures that we're after. Let's do this! Off-White is a brand name that you will hear before you will ever see Virgil's face or hear his name. This is one of those iconic brands that is ingrained by now in the streetwear culture. I knew about Off-White through the sneaker world. The 10 is the legendary partnership between the Nike and the Off-White brand. The 10 silhouettes of the shoes, the most popular shoes by Nike, all redesigned and adjusted. I've seen those shoes with that print on it. I knew, without really even knowing much about the sneaker world, those are exclusive, those are one-off releases that are very hard to get, and I will not be able to just go and pick them up in the local Foot Locker. This is the kind of impact Virgil made just on the sneaker industry. But that's not how Virgil's story started. As a first generation born in Chicago, in the United States, a child of immigrants, he was offered an opportunity that his parents never had. So before deciding to pursue his career in fashion, he had a very specific commitment to uphold.
My dad said, like, I always wanted a son as an engineer, and I'm the opposite of like a rebel type. So I was like, that's the least I can do for like for you making that stride from a third world country to, yeah, it's like you're gonna get a son that's an engineer.
Observing in Virgil's case, those analytical capabilities and those business experiences that you gather through those careers, through getting both undergrad and graduate degrees, you can now feed them back into your artistic adventures.
I explain to people it's like how the world works in a way. It's like an analytical thinking, like how do you make a building stand up? But then there's the yin-yang part of it. It was like, what does the building look like and what does it do? I use that in fashion design or in my art practice. What we're living now has already sort of been lived before us. The metaphors are like numerous.
Like, come on, I have to now extract this segment of the video and make it my channel trailer. That's how well it describes my personal approach to a lot of these things. It's like analyzing the old to inspire the new. I should make it a tagline going forward. And this is why I'm so inspired by Virgil's approach and his open mind. If you combine it all together and you start thinking about the fact that he became the student of arts and sciences and the history, he dives deep into a lot of different subjects and how he connects them all through and through.
As an architecture student, like I had a professor that said I didn't have the pedigree or ideas or skill set to sort of work in any sort of important context. So every no is perfect for me. I thrive off a no.
Being open-minded to your approach, to how you study things, to how you create things. And now you encompass that all together with that analytical capabilities that he developed while learning to be a civil engineer. All of this set the perfect stage and created that perfect storm for him to then meet this one very special and iconic hip-hop artist and another proud son of the city of Chicago.
Everybody wants to know what I would do if I didn't win. I guess we'll never know.
And you'll be surprised to know that both of them have been partnering on and off for the past 12 years. They influence undoubtedly each other's style, each other's approach to how they create in their own creative worlds. They also became those pivotal people behind the streetwear culture, making it to the front and center of the fashion world. You don't have to go too far away from this iconic photo taken by Tommy Tan at the Fashion Week in Paris. Virgil has an amazing story about how Kanye convinced essentially his friends to just go and show up at that fashion event and dress up their best, dressed to impress, and they made that desired impression on the world. That photo went viral before even the social media existed. The fashion industry started to notice those individuals. Yes, they were dressed avant-garde. Yes, not everyone would have dressed like this or would have accepted it, but the point was to make a statement, to announce yourself on that stage.
It's the same way I advocate other people do it too. Don't just go to where you think you want to work and just say, hey, I want to work there. You have to do something that they see value in so that the conversation is shorter.
Through continuous work with Kanye West, through opening their own boutique in Chicago, Virgil eventually landed in the place where he co-founded his Off-White brand. It was exciting to see how he was able to embed all of that knowledge and all that experience that he'd gained so far through traveling around the world, through working with different people, into one single brand. And through that work, through placing it in the center stage of the streetwear culture and almost making the definition of that word off-white, right? The color between the white and the black, the high fashion and those like big brands and those kids in the streets riding the skateboards. He was able to find that spot. And this is a point in time where he makes this very astute observation that set the foundation for the following major announcement that he made only a couple of years ago.
Clothes just come out at different times. They're posted on Instagram and consumers can buy them. And I'm interested in that hybrid in between them both. You know, I'm directly pointed at this generation that hasn't been messaged luxury to yet.
Now, can you think of a major luxury fashion house somewhere, say in France, that has its own very unique pattern that everyone recognizes on every single item that they produce? Well, if you thought about this particular pattern, you nailed it. Louis Vuitton noticed the impact that the Off-White brand was making among the generations of people that Louis Vuitton was struggling to acquire. And so instead of competing with Virgil, they decided to appoint him the lead designer on their men collection. This is the moment in time when you realize that the major fashion house endorses the lead designer behind one of the most hyped streetwear brands. And you see those two worlds slowly colliding. You know the sparks will fly.
This is always what I wanted to do, you know, and no one does it. At couture meets street, but people say it all the time.
This was monumental for many reasons. First and foremost, being that contributor to the development of the streetwear culture, he can now bring this into the major fashion house, and that fashion house recognizes that they need that influence. He was the first lead designer of African descent. And in this following segment, Virgil describes how realistic he thought the chances of him taking that place would be even 5 to 6 years ago.
I did not ever think that I could be a designer with a capital D, because no one looked like me. I have to get struck by a certain type of lightning to get that sort of epiphany, to be someone to tap me with a wand and say, you're a designer.
Imagine the confidence in your own skills to surpass that mental challenge and take on that lead position. And I personally think that even today, for the past 2-3 years being the lead designer at Louis Vuitton, Virgil is still only climbing towards the zenith of his own career. His attention to details is what Louis Vuitton can definitely benefit from. So many major fashion brands forget that yes, they can attract attention with the colors, with these oddities and unique and very differently looking outfits, but yet when you get closer and closer to some of those brands, when you start looking at those attires and you start looking at the accessories, you realize that a lot of those finer details fall apart. Just recently I was talking to someone and I used the example of this particular shoe. When you look at it from a distance, it's just a regular white Air Jordan 1. It's not, by the way, by Virgil, it's just a regular Nike shoe. But what I appreciate about it is the level of details and some of this intricate finer parts and the stitching and the type of leather that they used that caught my eye. Essentially, this is the opposite of that example where from a distance it looks like a regular shoe, but the closer look you take, the more it inspires you and the more you appreciate the craftsmanship and the design thought behind it. And this is the kind of things that I observe in Virgil's work. Anytime I look at the shoes, at the accessories that he produces, the more I stare at them, the finer and more unique and interesting details that I find. And when you start combining those two worlds together, I'm already excited seeing everything that he was able to contribute and how some of the design decisions changed at Louis Vuitton. And also clearly the commercial side of things is doing pretty healthy. And all of this set the ideal stage for the announcement that they just recently made when essentially Louis Vuitton decided to make it official and they acquired the majority stake in the Off-White brand and essentially made that commitment to Virgil even beyond the next few years as a lead designer of their brand.
LVMH made a big play acquiring Off-White, a hot brand in over 40 countries. It's led by designer Virgil Abloh, who's also a Louis Vuitton artistic director. Why is this on the news? Well, the move is making major waves beyond fashion. As the New York Times puts it today, it makes Abloh, quote, the most powerful black executive at the most powerful luxury goods group in the world.
This is also one heck of a full circle if you think about it, from the streets of Chicago to the civil engineering degree to essentially putting the prints on Ralph Lauren items and selling them at tenfold, to then working with Kanye, creating the Off-White brand helping you to find that space in the fashion industry. You take on the lead job in the Louis Vuitton and then Louis Vuitton goes and acquires your initial brand. This is the kind of thing that you want to see from people who work hard, who becoming the students of their industry and essentially trying to bring something new. And this is why for this final segment, I want to talk about a few things, 3 specifically, that we can learn from Virgil and apply in our own industries, crafts, and the professions, and how we can put all of those lessons together starting today, right after you finish watching this video.
People ask me all the time, do you feel some sense of like achievement or fulfillment? And the answer is 0.
The first lesson is be the student of the world, expose yourself to a diverse amount of information, and make sure your circle of friends is composed of individuals with very diverse points of view. Number 2, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Virgil have made mistakes in his career. Some of them are more controversial than the others, but ultimately when you think about his style, it's a continuous inspiration and exploration, and then input of those ideas that you found and kind of like reshuffling them and creating something completely new of your own. And sometimes it's successful, sometimes it's not. So when you work through it, create something of your own, attribute the things that you've learned from other people, and then continuously push that envelope ever forward. Finally, as you develop those fruits of labor, as you start delivering those projects, don't forget to create an encompassing, well-connected world around them, because ultimately this is what will carry your brand name forward, independently of the type of industry or occupation you're in. In this following segment, Virgil describes how a simple candle can be 2 very different things depending on what it is surrounded by.
Say it's this, like I'm designing this candle. If I put this candle in an all-white gallery space, it looks like a piece of art. If I put it on like in a garage, it looks like a piece of trash. I often use this analogy in design. I could either design the candle and spend a lot of time like telling you about the candle, or I could just design the room that it sits in.
When you look back at this video, when you think about all of those small items that I've highlighted about Virgil, no wonder he made it from being a kid in the streets of Chicago to being this fashion icon on the global arena. And I don't even have time to talk through all other major collaborations he's been through. Just as highlights, he worked with IKEA, with Avian, he worked with Jimmy Choo, he created his own DJ boards because the guy actually DJs on the side, he worked with Levi's, Champion, he worked with Converse, Warby Parker. The guy's busy. The guy's busy, he's busy applying all of those learnings from other industries. It's interesting to see how, as he works with other brands, he brings back those items and applies them at Louis Vuitton and some of the other brands that he's working on. All of this combined creates a unique individual who contributes a lot to different sides of this fashion industry. To drive my point home and underscore the kind of person Virgil is, I want to use this following segment, especially because when I walked into this video, when I walked into learning and kind of like researching about Virgil, I'll admit, I thought he'll be some, pretentious guy who really thinks highly and mighty about his work and about the kind of things that he creates. But I was pleasantly surprised. And I was pleasantly surprised by a few things that Virgil said right here.
I'm no one. Essentially, I'm just an assistant to the people that came before me, trying to add to the design that goes forward for the next generation to continue. Like, I'm not anything, I'm just creative. There's different words, there's different boxes to put types of creativity into, which I'm not that preoccupied with. I'm only interested in like making relevant ideas.
Did you know who Virgil Abloh is? Did you know anything about the Off-White brand? And who are other individuals similar to him, kind of like standing in the shadows of bigger brands, yet make the monumental impact on the entire industry? Share your thoughts and ideas in the section below. It was a fun video to make, especially because of all the different things that I've learned about Virgil, about the fact that he actually even collaborated with someone like Takashi Murakami, someone I spoke about in this video about J Balvin. The guy have been around the world and he've contributed to so many different things. And I know also, by the way, worth mentioning, some people like to attribute some drama between him and Kanye now that a few years passed and Virgil is at the helm of one of the lines within Louis Vuitton. After all, Kanye West went on record multiple times talking about how he wanted to be in a similar kind of lead designer position. I'll present to you this short video from the first fashion show that showcased Virgil collection, and you can see Kanye West in the front line, and afterwards you can see this guy seemingly wiping the tears off his face from the pride that he has for the friend, for collaborator, for someone who he worked with for years before Virgil was even close to being in a position to take on this kind of a role. Virgil himself went on record talking about how Kanye West paved the way for designers like him on that major scene. And if you're like me, inspired by studying this kind of individuals, learning from them, seeing what kind of lessons you can apply in your own career, well, I'm here every Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this video with some of your friends. Here are a couple more videos for you to enjoy, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.